Hello, my name's Craig Hanken. I'm the USA Triathlon Draft Legal Technical Specialist. Today, this webinar will cover USA Triathlon Draft Legal Duathlon equipment and a brief rules overview. This presentation can be found at draftlegalrules.com as well. So first thing first, let's cover the gear that will be expected to be seen in a draft legal duathlon. There are some specific rules related to uniforms for international competitions. So if you do qualify for World's Draft Legal Duathlon, you'll be required to purchase the USA Triathlon team uniform. For our US-based draft legal duathlons, the uniform does need to be a 1- or 2-piece uniform that fully covers your torso. So again, 1 or 2 pieces covers your torso. There are no rules or regulations related to athlete last name or country code or sponsors as well. But one thing that I will note is women may wear a 1-piece swimsuit if that is something they prefer. But in either case, if the uniform has a zipper in the front in this area here under the chin, as is sometimes seen, that zipper must remain up for the entire race. If it is unzipped and an official observes that, then there could be a penalty applied. In your race packet, you will receive athlete marking for your equipment. The first is your body, so number tattoos will be in there. They should be applied to both shoulders and to both legs between the ankle and the knees, as shown in the picture here. You'll also receive a race bib that needs to be worn during the race as well. Next up is related to your helmet. In your race packet, again, the numbering system will have a sticker that goes directly on the front of your helmet. And then the details that are related to your helmet are on the screen now. First things first, you do need to wear a helmet, and it needs to be in really good shape. There should be no cracks or damage, visible damage to it. It shouldn't have been altered in any manner. Secondly, it must meet or exceed the safety standards of the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. And the way that we know that has happened is that there will be a label on the interior of your helmet that says that it is approved by the CPSC. That sticker must be in place for you to use that helmet during competition. I'm going to repeat that again because this is a very important piece of information. Again, your CPSC sticker that is on the inside of your helmet, it must be in place. If it's not, then the official will ask you to find another helmet so that to use during competition. Then the last 2 bullets are pretty simple. We like to see the chin straps nice and snug under your chin. The litmus test generally for that is when the helmet's on your head and the chin strap is buckled. If you can take your hand and pull that chin strap up and over your chin, then it's not tight enough. So please take some time to check that before you arrive on race morning. It's something that holds up the line for everybody else after you. And so if that chin strap is not in the proper condition, you'll be asked to go to the back of the line. Secondly, we're going to talk about aero helmets here in a second, but they are not recommended. So this next 2 slides are just pictures of what a CPSC sticker looks like. You can see it here. It complies with the US CPSC sticker. This is for a Rudy helmet. The funny thing to note is that they're different on every helmet. So here's another version of it. Sometimes they're white, sometimes they're blue. There's a variety of them, and the officials know what they're looking for. I would take a moment before you arrive on race morning to make sure it's in there. And the excuse of, well, it must have come out because I sweated my helmet or something like that is not going to fly with the officials. So please check your helmet beforehand. If it does not have a sticker, then please make sure you get a helmet with a sticker in it. We get questions quite a bit about helmet styles, and the aero helmet always comes up. Now in these 2 pictures here, we're not talking specifically about the brand of helmet, we're talking about the overall shape. You can use either of these helmets during competition. We recommend the helmet that's on the right side. It's small and compact. It meets all of the safety standards, and it allows you to move your head from left to right without any hindrance. We're a little bit afraid with the helmets that have the long, extended, pointed tail on them that they're unsafe in this type of racing. So again, we prefer the helmet here on the right as opposed to the one on the left. So let's get into the bike equipment. We get quite a few questions about this. So first things first, generally the frame of the bike should be of a traditional triangle pattern. So that means that it's built around a closed frame of straight or tapered tubular elements. So non-traditional or unusual bikes or equipment are going to be illegal unless prior approval has been given by the lead official, and that's prior to the start of competition. So beam bikes are not allowed in the competition. If you have specific questions or would like to see the specific rules, those exact bike measurements can be found in the ITU competition rules for age group draft legal events. It's rule 5.2 D as in dog, and that's located on page 30 and 31 of the ITU rules of competition. You will receive a bike number sticker in your race packet. That needs to be attached to your bike either on the seat post or on the top tube here. I would recommend it's a sticker that you put those on the night before. Sometimes you arrive on race morning and it's humid or damp out and they just don't want to stick, and that presents a problem for everybody. So put them on the night before and be all set up. Secondly, your wheels need to have a minimum of 12 spokes, and the back wheel or the front wheel for that matter cannot be disc wheels. So that's an age group rule. If you've watched or maybe you've heard from other athletes that say that that wheels have to go through the UCI non-standard wheel list. That's not true for age group athletes. The two things officials are looking for is 12 or more spokes, and that neither wheel is a disc. They also want to see that both wheels are the same size. So wheels come in two dimensions. They're either 650s or 700s. They both need to be 650s or they both need to be 700s. So not a 650 on the front and a 700 on the back. Now to clarify that, let's say you have a set of zip wheels, right? You might put a 404 on the front and a 808 on the back. It's very common to see that. Those are approved as long as they have 12 or more spokes. And so the wheels can be different brands or makes as long as they have the 12 spokes and not a disc wheel, but they can't be different sizes. So next up is we're looking for traditional drop style handlebars and brake levers. This is what you see on road bikes, and it's shown in the diagrams here. Both ends of the bars here need to have bar end plugs in them. So check those again before race morning to make sure those are in place. And then the big question of the day seems to be whether age group athletes can use clip-on aero bars. And so I'm here to tell you age group athlete rules do not allow clip-on aero bars of any type to be used during competition. So just here's a quick graphic. Again, they are not allowed, and whether they're the shorty aero bars that sit behind your brake levers, or they're the bull horns that have the long extended ends on them, that is, neither of these are allowed. No type of aero bar is allowed for age group draft legal racing. So let's jump into what will happen on race morning. When you arrive on race morning to get loaded into transition and prepare for your race day, officials will greet you at the entrance to transition, and they're going to want to take a look at your equipment and your body marking. So just to make things super smooth and easy, I recommend you arrive at that check-in and equipment review with your bike, with your helmet snapped tightly on your head, with your uniform on your body, and all your body marking and bike marking in place and on your body. They will ask you to remove your helmet once you get to the front so that they can take a look for that CPSC sticker. But again, I've been to a number of pre-race check-ins where officials are reviewing things. Seems like people have a number of bags, their helmets in one hand, a water bottle in the next, and they're trying to juggle a lot of things. Get yourself organized the night before. Show up with your gear in a backpack or a bag that you can carry and put that helmet on your head. For transition at the start of the race, there are a couple of bullet points I wanted to cover. Every athlete will have an assigned position within transition, and that will be a sticker that's on the bike rack. And that's where you will rack your bike and store your race gear. Secondly, the racks need to be, or the bikes need to be racked by the seat nose and facing the field of play. Thirdly, all of the gear that you bring or that you will use during competition should either be on your bike or on the ground behind your front wheel. And I have a picture here I'm going to show you in a second of the ideal setup for transition. Next is once your bike is in transition, it's been reviewed by the officials, then your bike cannot be removed until removed from transition until competition begins. Now the last note is an important one. In no uncertain terms can you mark your spot in transition. It's simply not permitted. So you may have received one of those cool transition mats, or maybe you have some colored duct tape or balloons or something. We've seen a lot of different ideas out there on how to do this. Make sure that you don't bring those things. If an official finds those, that you've used those, then they will remove those and they will not notify you that they've removed them. So this is just a quick little picture to show you what we're looking at. You can see here is the bike rack sticker number. It says 492. This bike saddle is hooked over the bar by the nose of the saddle. This athlete clearly does a flying mount, so their shoes are on their bike. The helmet is here on the brake lever. It's a perfect place for it because it very rarely falls off from that point. And the run shoes are down here on the ground next to the front wheel, but behind the front wheel, as I mentioned, right? So let's say you don't do a flying mount. It's perfectly acceptable. Your bike shoes should go where the run shoes are in this picture, and your run shoes would go back here. If you want to place your helmet on top of your bike shoes, that's acceptable as well. I will say transition can be chaotic, and so what I've observed many times over is that a helmet or equipment can get accidentally kicked by a competitor or even yourself. And it goes flying in a direction you don't want it to go. So hooking that helmet on your brake lever there, like it is shown, is a great way to keep it in place. And very rarely does it leave that point until you put it on your head. Two things to note about this picture as well. You notice that little black X on the bike rack, which an official could consider to be marking of transition. That would be removed. And then secondly, what you'll notice is missing from the picture is any duffel bags, backpacks, equipment bags. Those do not exist in transition. The only equipment that you should bring into transition or leave in transition once you go to the start line is the equipment that's on your bike and on the ground next to you. All bags need to go to the bag check-in before the race begins. So because we're talking about duathlon, we'll talk about both Run 1 and Run 2. At this point, the two bullets here that are important for you to remember are that you must follow the prescribed course. It'll be marked well. There'll be volunteers along the way. And you must wear your race bib number during both runs. Next up is transition during the race. As we talked earlier in Transition 1, after you come back from the first run into Transition 1, if you are going to not wear a hat or sunglasses, or there's equipment that you used on the run that you won't wear on the bike, then that should be placed under your rack, near your rack sticker number. In Transition 2, you'll be coming back from doing the bike segment of the race. you're going to rack your bike at your marked position, and you're going to do that facing your number with both brake levers or by the saddle nose either direction. But it must be near your marked position on the rack. And secondly, any bike equipment that you're not going to use on the run, then you would either leave it on the bike. So if you did a flying dismount, for example, your shoes can remain on the bike. You don't have to take them off. And place any other equipment like your helmet on the ground under your rack. One thing to note about transition that I just want to talk about is the mount and dismount lines, and that's related to shoes. So if one of those shoes pops off, this is particularly important at the dismount line. You need to leave that bike shoe on the ground. You can come find it at the end of the race at the area where the volunteers are managing the transition area, but do not go backwards to get it. It's dangerous and unsafe. We want you to keep going with the flow of traffic. It's not necessary for you to return and grab that shoe that popped out of your bike pedal. Notes on the bike course. It's important that you follow the prescribed course. It's your job to know how many laps or loops are on the bike course. It's your job to know where it goes, where the turnaround points are. Of course, we'll do our job from the standpoint of race production and mark it well, but again, it is up to you to know that course. The second bullet is obvious, right? We're talking about draft legal duathlon, and it's important to note that drafting is allowed, but it's not required, right? You may draft in this race. You may not be able to draft or may not choose to draft if you don't want to. What that means is that passing of a competitor is allowed on the right or the left side of the competitor. One thing to note, I always recommend that athletes are very communicative with the riders that are near them on the course about your intentions. So it's perfectly acceptable passing on your left, to say passing on your left or passing on your right or slowing, anything like that. Stay, make sure you're riding a straight line. Don't be swerving wildly, and always communicate to the riders on the course. The last point is important. And to note that race bib numbers must be worn on the bike. You can spin them around so that they're on your back, but they must be worn on the bike. So let's talk about penalties quickly. There are three types of penalties in the way that they're delivered. The first one is a warning. You might have heard them called stop and go or warning and amend. Warning and amend is how they refer to them into the ITU age group rules of competition, and this is a verbal warning that's given to you by an official to correct an issue during competition. So again, an official might observe something that is against the rules. They're going to really work to educate you and help you along. If they see it, they will can give you a warning and amend. They're going to ask you to stop and correct the problem, and then you can carry on with your race. The second type of penalty is a time penalty. In a draft legal duathlon, that is a sprint distance, all time penalties are 10 seconds. And those penalties can be served in transition or on the spot where the official finds you, or on the run course at the penalty box. Okay. Then the third is a disqualification. An official can show you a red card or just say to you, blow a whistle and say to you, you are disqualified. Athletes, one thing to note is that athletes who do receive a red card may complete the race and then determine the next steps related to appealing the penalty. So the key is this. If you are disqualified, you have a chance to go through an appeal process related to that penalty, and I'm going to cover that here in a second, but it's important that you finish the race. If you don't finish the race, then it doesn't matter. So this is just a quick overview of the penalties for competition. Early starts or on the first run or false starts either will result. A false start is when several people have false started, and we're going to bring everyone back to the start line and start it over. Otherwise, early starters will receive a time penalty, and that will be served on the run course at the penalty box. Athletes must make forward motion at the start. Blocking or interfering the progress of another competitor is another infraction. Making sure that your helmet is buckled when you're touching your bike, that's an infraction. Riding, of course, riding your bike in transition, and that also relates to missing the mount or dismount lines. Those are infractions. You do need to follow the correct course and the correct lap count. There's a couple of important ones here at the end that I always like to touch on. Crossing the center line on the bike course is simply a disqualification if an official observes it. While the bike course is closed to car and truck traffic, it is two-way traffic on this course. It's an out and back course in Bend, Oregon. And so it's important that you do not, for any reason, cross the center line into oncoming traffic. And secondly, unsportsmanlike conduct is not allowed. It's not permitted, so please refrain from that. So related to age group draft legal racing, we're still very new in this process. So our officials are working hard to educate and help steer people in the right direction. If they observe a penalty that is about to happen or is happening, and they can help amend that, if they can give you a warning and amend, then they're going to do that. They're gonna stop you, ask you to alter what you're doing, and then you go on your merry way. If they can't get to you fast enough, then you will receive a time penalty, and time penalties are served at the penalty box on the run course. One thing that is always a big topic of conversation is the lap out rule, whether people will be lapped out, and in Bend the lap out rule is not in effect. So penalties not served in transition or on the spot will be served in the penalty box. The penalty box looks suspiciously like a 10 by 10 tent. It has a whiteboard next to it. It's on the run course near the finish line, and on that whiteboard will be written numbers. So if your number is 1, 2, 3, for example, and you didn't snap your helmet in time or unsnapped it after you jumped off your bike at the dismount line, then that number 1, 2, 3 will be written on the board. It's important to know there could be many numbers on the board of all types. If there's a ×2 or ×3 after it, that means you have 2 penalties or 3 penalties. So the procedure for the penalty box is you come in, identify yourself, tell the official your number. They will start the timing penalty, and then you have to remain in the penalty box the entire time the official is timing you. You cannot receive any outside assistance while serving the penalty from anyone that's following you or with you. The official will let you know when your time is served. That's the important thing. Sometimes I see athletes who do the counting in their head and they decide when they're done. Unfortunately, you need to wait for the official to tell you that the 10 seconds have expired. The key here is that penalties that are written on that penalty board at the penalty box, they have to be served. It's your job to check that board. The numbers will be written large and clearly. If you have your number written on the penalty box board and you don't serve the penalty, it will result in your disqualification from the race. So it's important that you check that penalty board. It's on the run course. It's not very far from the finish line. Again, just check it. If you do not serve your penalty and it's on the board, you're disqualified and there is no opportunity for you to appeal that decision. So let's just talk quickly about the protest or appeal process. There are the two things here are a protest, and an athlete can file a protest with the lead official as long as it hasn't been previously observed or ruled upon by officials. Also, a protest is filed against the conduct of another athlete or an athlete's equipment or an official or the conditions of competition. Generally, a protest happens before the race. Okay, you observe somebody who is racked in the wrong position, or you observe somebody who has done something wrong, unsportsmanlike behavior. You can protest that, and we're going to cover that process here in a second. The second thing we'll talk about is an appeal, and an appeal is a request for really a review of a decision that was made by an official or the competition jury. So these are generally in competition related to things that happen during competition, right? I don't think that I missed the course, or I racked my bike correctly. So these are the types of things that an appeal covers. The process generally, as in very general terms, protest and appeal must follow the following 3 steps. First of all, you need to notify the lead official of your intent to submit a protest or an appeal within 5 minutes of your finish time. At that time, the lead official will give you the appropriate paperwork that you'll need to complete, and then the completed paperwork, whether it's a protest or appeal, that form must be submitted to the lead official no more than 15 minutes after your finish time. So 15 minutes after your finish time, the paperwork must be completed, and a deposit of $50, either cash or check, needs to accompany that protest or appeal form. So again, complete the paperwork, return it to the lead official at the finish line no more than 15 minutes after you've completed your race, and include that $50 cash or check. Then the process goes as such. They're reviewed by the lead official and a competition jury. All decisions on appeals are final. And again, during the race, if you have any questions, or after the race, if you have any questions, those questions should be sent directly to Jay Ritterbeck at the email address that's shown here. Related to the competition jury, that's made up of 3 individuals, one of which is the lead official. They review the information. They can ask you questions related to your appeal or protest. Then they meet privately and make a decision and notify you of the results. If you win the appeal or protest, then that deposit, the $50 deposit, goes back to you. If you do not win, then the deposit is kept by USA Triathlon. So just a quick 10 things that I've seen at races. They're pretty simple. We get a lot of people who show up with the wrong bike gear at races. We have aero bars or disc wheel, or those are the big things with that. We do from time to time see false starts or early starts. Third one is that darn helmet, that CPSC stickered, does not exist inside the helmet, so make sure that's in there. One thing we do see a lot, it's different than USAT non-draft racing, in that if you remove your bike from a rack without your helmet on and the chin strap buckled, then that is a big one for a penalty we see quite often. The next one is the mount line. Of course, make sure you hit that. It's well marked and a large line on the ground. Remember, the mount line, you must mount after the line. The next bullet is folks who do the incorrect number of laps on the bike or the runs. We see that quite often. Again, the next one is related to dismount line. You have to get a foot down before, 1 foot down before the dismount line. And again, if you're doing a flying dismount and that shoe pops off at that time, just leave the shoe. You head to transition to your marked spot and rack your bike and carry on with your race. We'll get that shoe and hold it at the area where the volunteers are staged in transition. Another one I see is at the dismount line, and it's unbuckling the bike helmet on the way back to your bike rack. That helmet has to be on your head, and a chin strap has to be buckled until you have racked your bike at your marked spot in transition, or it will be a penalty. One that I've seen affect several people's races, and it's such a disappointment to see, is folks who did not serve their penalties that were shown at the penalty box board. If you don't serve your penalty, then you will be disqualified, and there's no protest or appeal related to that. And lastly is a biggie. I think I just encourage you all to conduct yourselves as the great people that you are, and so unsportsmanlike behavior is simply not tolerated in any way. Okay? So if you have any questions, this slide talks to 2 important things. The rules that I've covered in this quick webinar are a very brief overview, right, of the rules. The full listing of the rules of competition related to age group draft legal duathlon are located at www.triathlon.org. Again, there's a very long list. All the details are in there. I would encourage you to familiarize yourself with those rules. Don't learn from your mistakes. Learn what mistakes you shouldn't make beforehand. And if you have any questions related to the webinar or any of the rules or equipment issues, please email me at craig.hanken@usatriathlon.org. I'll be quick to point you in the right direction to get the official verdict for your question and get you on your way. So Just a quick thank you for taking the time to watch this webinar. I wish you good luck in your competition and look forward to seeing you on race day. Thank you so much.